Okay, so if you can see my screen, thank you for joining this InfoShare. I am Xavier Janin. I work for a work package in GÉANT 4-3 that is called Network Technology and Service Development. And I am the task leader of the Network Technology Evolution. And within this network technology evolution task, there is one task dedicated to quantum and especially to quantum key distributions that is led by Piotr Ridlochowski, sorry for the pronunciations, which is our technical leader. So we are very pleased to welcome you to this InfoShare, and we have realized this work also with the help of Susan Nigel Jackson from DFN. So this InfoShare was made with the help of GÉANT Partner Relationship Team, and I would like to thank them too for their help. Just to recap a little before we start the InfoShare by itself, I just would like to focus a little bit on what we try to achieve in network technology and service development work package. Quantum is a really surprising new technology. It's really something that doesn't work like we used to have. We are familiar with managing a new technology, implementing into our network and so on. But for quantum, it's really something that is different because it's following some rules that is not the rules that we currently manage in our, I would say, classical world. So what we try to do is to make European NREN quantum aware. It means that we will really focus on dissemination. We have already produced a white papers, and we now have the pleasure to see that we have started a wiki that we expect that we could improve on keep it alive. And the second aspect is about testing technology, and this is something that we work in collaboration also with the industry that is already providing some device that can be bought and installed in your network. We also, of course, exploring possibility to have a quantum service, or at least the first quantum service for GÉANT and so on. And as it is an emerging technology, we need also to have standardization because the different vendors need to cooperate and so forth. I just put this slide just to let you know that there is a list that you can join that we call QKD Discuss, where you can ask any questions. And you have also the list of the members of our team. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask, do not hesitate to contact them. What is really important for us is also your feedback. So there will be, of course, you are now familiar with the InfoShare. There will be into the Zoom a chat where you can submit your questions. And there will be also open discussions where we expect that you take part. That will be really help us to lead our work in the right direction. So just to recap the context, you know that there was a first, I would say, quantum revolution, which was the discover that in physics there is a world, a quantic world, on which the classical rules is not applied, but there is new rules, new principles like superposition and entanglement that we cannot see in a classical world. And this has been demonstrated and now in laboratories And what we expect with this second revolution is to controlling these new principles in order to have the possibility to detect new things, to improve some device, or to even provide things that was not possible previously, like quantum computing and so forth. So it was really identified by a lot of different countries, China, Japan, United States, England, Germany, Netherlands, Italy, and France, and so on and so forth. Sorry, yeah, I forgot some of them. That we are maybe just in front of technology and industrial revolution. So there is different development plans that has been put in place. You can see on the link the European one. And the idea here is to say that if we would like to have in Europe some vendors that is some part of the industry that is working on quantum, on this tech part into this revolution, we have to create an ecosystem. This ecosystem will be made up with, of course, scientific, but also startup and also vendors and so on. And it is where a research and education community can play a key role, especially research and education network, because they can, as we did already for other technology, we can be the first to implement things in production and so on. So in order to make the NRENs, I would say quantum aware, we had a first quantum Infoshare that was focusing on the principles. And now this one will focus on the first application in quantum communication, which is the quantum cryptography and especially the quantum key distribution. And with this, I will leave the floor to Piotr that will chair this Infoshare. Piotr.
Thank you, Xavier, for the kind introduction. I think that we can proceed with the second Infoshare. We have a little bit updated agenda, so and regarding the session one, especially we'll have one longer discussion. It will be about the QKD principles and especially networks aspect. The presentation will be given by Andreas Poppe from Austrian Institute of Technology. And after the presentation, we'll have usually the open discussion, coffee break. And in the session two, we'll have a series of presentation, first from our colleague Christian Panik from Aconet, and from our colleagues from the QKD system developers vendors, so from ID Quantique, Toshiba. And at the end, I will try to show a very short presentation about the QKD link that we have running in our testbed in PSNC, just to show what can we expect. So I think it's this is the agenda, and I think we can proceed to the first discussion, to the first talk. Andreas is the project leader, Open QKD project leader at Austrian Institute of Technology. And I think, Andreas, if you could also introduce a few words about your activities, your research work, it would be more than welcome. Thank you for your time to join us and discuss with us.
So thank you, Piotr. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Andreas.
Yes, very good. So thank you for this invitation. Yes, so I'm nearly, my name is Andreas Poppe. I'm at the AIT again. So I'm nearly 20 years now in the field of quantum technologies. The first 6 or so, I was postdoc at the University of Vienna at Professor Zeilinger's Institute. And you heard at the first Infoshare a talk from a former colleague, Rupert Ursin's group. Then I've been 7 years at the AIT, making development of entanglement-based QKD systems, systems in general, but also QKD networks. Afterwards, I was 4 years at Harvey in Munich, technical leader of the development of their CV-QKD system. And now I'm since 1.5 years or so back at the AIT to participate at the leading team of Open QKD. So this is a really big project. And so Hannes Hübel is the real project leader, but of course he needs a strong right hand, and that's me. I will talk about today about some different topics, a little bit broad. I tried to guess your expectations and try to match my talk there. At least I could even guess some buzzwords like ecosystem, which is really important. And thank you, Xavier, for this nice introduction, ramp up for the activities and for the future, what is really important. I will also go a little touch that at point 1. At point 2, I will still do a little bit principles for QKD protocols, wrap up different ones. Then I believe it's important that you understand what about the trusted node paradigm, because you work with networks, not need to have trusted nodes, and the quantum internet in far future also will not have trusted nodes, but just the time in between we need them for QKD networks. Also, maybe I thought interesting for you could be some future network plannings. We did some work 2 years ago with Deutsche Telekom. I will also touch that. And at the end, I hope I have some time, will update you with the status of Open QKD. But first, just a moment, I'm not sure if you, this is maybe better. I'm not sure if this was covered or not. First, I want to go a little bit into the direction as already Tommaso Colacco, the expert anyhow, told you the last time at the first Infoshare. And therefore, I displayed already here the fleet of different projects of the European community, of the EU, but also of some member states. There are some national projects, also some combination at the Quantera project. But I really want to point you to the QKD testbed, because there's a single QKD network project there, which is Open QKD. We are leading this project. But first, I want to go to touch the quantum flagship, the most important part here, as already Tommaso pointed out the last time. It's not, now it's working. Probably he showed some slide like that. There's this famous pillars, but to be honest, the former picture, sorry, I need to go back, is related to Horizon 2020. And you know that this project will end very soon. So the new work program should be published soon. Maybe it was, no, it is just really a matter of days or weeks, or maybe hours, and there we see different changes, how the flagship projects will be continued, because now it's the first phase, and then there will come a second one where some FPAs will need to be formed in order to proceed for these flagship projects. But this is not necessarily EuroQCI, as I will show you later. AAT is involved in 2 flagship projects from the pillar communication. We lead Unicorn, which really prepares the vision of to have even quantum pluggables here, to use QKD really in a very way that it's cheap. It's just very similar, as you know now, from SFP modules or so. We prepare this ecosystem, but this really takes some time. I personally was more involved with the civic project, which focuses on the system aspect, how to bring, how to first of all develop useful systems. We developed a continuous variable QKD system, but also how to bring these systems in a telecom environment. And therefore, we also had some big telecoms on board, like Telefonica, Deutsche Telekom, and Orange. And their role was really a good one, because together with them, we could really define some specifications for use cases, for requirements, in order to develop our QKD systems and components further, and prepare also the next generation, and to bring them to networks in order to set them in operation. This did not happen, but the project has not ended yet. It is also extended by 6 months. So we have for the validation benchmark roughly 1 year time from now on. Yeah, our dream is more on the system side, really, to integrate our future QKD system seamless in communication infrastructure, as you have in your production network, so to say. Thereby, it's clear that the QKD system, it's nice to have single boxes, but what is really needed is really heavily integrated devices where the management, the software of the overall system could handle also the QKD systems, and to manage and to define some routes and networks and so on. And this is, so to say, our vision from the civic project. The next step, as I said before, is that from the European side, is that Horizon 2020 ends, Horizon Europe will begin, but Europe UCI is an important part, probably also wait for, is not part of Horizon Europe, but will be part of Digital Europe. And what I heard the last week, we had a good series of introduction talks of our NCP, is that this Digital Europe program will be a little bit delayed, but still we can expect in the first open call in the second and third quarter of 2021 this year. And now it's, so to say, nearly the time where the first project should be formed in order to fulfill then the goals. The goals are, on one hand, of course, we have a terrestrial network, which should be a QKD network, and the second phase later on should be a quantum internet. And for the first phase, and maybe for the second one, also some satellites somehow on the topic of the list. You probably know this picture anyhow, but the vision so is also to really connect main capital cities in Europe by QKD links. Yes. So the advantage of QKD links, of course, they provide long-term security for medical data. I will probably have time at the end to show you some latest results of from OpenQKD, also used for governance, military, and so on. And I see it for communication, but also to protect critical infrastructure there. Now I come to the second point of the talk. It's QKD protocols. There's a different zoo of protocols possible. Later on, as Piotr said, we have some talks from ID Quantique and Toshiba. They use discrete variable QKD. The last time we heard already a talk of entanglement-based QKD, the phase distribution protocols, and the CV-QKD. I worked over the longest time for CV-QKD, the last 5 or 6 years or something like that, before the entanglement-based protocol. Just in principle, for the first two different categories, there exist really good security proofs. The other two, also the theory to really secure or define secure regimes of the different devices, not fully done yet, and there are still some even interesting results to be expected, and it's just really what is secure, what is not secure, in which regime, working regime, different protocols are secure. So it's like also an ongoing research topic. The first three protocols use single photon detectors. It means it's a little bit like a return to zero or other formats of classical communication. The continuous variable system is uses also homodyne detection, balanced receivers, and is more comparable to usual coherent communication, and both of them have advantages and disadvantages. And I think it's fair to say there will be no future QKD system which fulfill all the different requirements, but I expect a variation of 5 to 6 having their special fields, their different applications, because they match to different regimes, to different price tags at the end, and co-propagation or not, and so on. So it's a very interesting field for further development, and therefore also European community decided to continue with the flagship, also to fund the research, but the development should also be the topic of this Digital Europe program, as I talked before. Yes, the typical physics slides now. It's the Alice and Bob. They want to communicate, so over the classical channel, and of course you can assume, but they need to be assumed that an eavesdropper is there, and they try to hide the data by encrypting the data with current methods. But look to Eve and her smile. She obviously has a quantum computer in her lab, and therefore Alice and Bob need to switch to the quantum channel using quantum signals. I don't go into this physics motivated statements below. But as Eleni already shortly touched in the first series, this is the famous BP84 protocol. Alice needs to code her information to a single photon. She can first choose as a bit 0, 1, but both variants are possible to be included, encoded in the horizontal vertical basis. We are again doing polarization coding, just it's really intuitive, or a 45-degree basis, and these photons are sent out to Bob, and Bob chooses one of these bases just randomly. If the bases match to Alice's preparation basis, there will be a correct measurement. If the basis is wrong, which is the case for 50% of the times. The photons will generate at 50% again of this 50% the right result, the 50% the wrong result. It means for this very easy to understand protocol, one could assume an error rate of 25%. And this gives already an indication what to look at, because the QKD is anyhow really based on the principle that there's no cloning theorem. Eve needs to stick to the rules of the world, and this is one of the rules which really have been proven rigorously with mathematical means. So each attack will introduce some errors, and Alice and Bob must look to the errors on the quantum line in order to figure out if there was some attack or not. When we look a little bit closer to this topic, it means that we see here the mutual information percent bit over the error rate. So if the error rate increases, the mutual information between Alice and Bob, excuse me, is going down, it's decreasing. On the other hand, at the same time, Eve can do this attack in order and causes these errors. She gets more and more information. The blue line is the best individual attack which is possible, and not that good attack would be somehow below under this blue line. It means she would not gain that much information, but we need to assume that Eve has the best attack which is possible. And so the difference between the information between Alice and Bob and the information between Alice and Bob and Eve is the one which can be used to generate a secure key. And here you can see that at this point of 15%, there would be no information available which goes beyond Eve's information. Therefore, at this point, the secure key rate would be 0. But unfortunately, this is only true for individual attacks. There are coherent attacks and collective attacks, which are even stronger, and there's a new intersection point at 11%. But at the same time, it's mathematically proven there are no attacks which gives Eve more information. It means that it's a hard bound, and it's clear that if the error rate is below 11%, for DV-QKD, Alice and Bob can distill a key, which means, which price is to pay for the security? The answer is the low rate. Because if Alice sends a lot of photons to Bob, they get lost and so on, they get absorbed. Alice and Bob needs to do some basis reconciliation, error correction, and so on. And at the end, after privacy amplification, the rate of the QKD systems is then pretty low. But I guess you will hear it from Quantique and Toshiba, but the rates are there. This brings me to the topic. There are different schemes here. It's from Quantique, this previous plug-and-play system. I guess you will see here that Quantique is now using some different system like COW. There are some systems with the differential phase coding, and Toshiba uses this BB84 decoy states protocol. For the commercial devices, the devices which has the most impact up to now when you count simply the deployment is the China system, Quantum CTech. Eleni showed you a slide, I copied it, and you will see the China Network 8, and you will hear some talks of these both partners of OpenQKD later on. But as I said at the beginning, is also important for me is that you understand the trusted node paradigm as a new ingredient of QKD networks. And there are some number of slides. I want now to go through them. But before, it's a kind of history, what happened in the field of QKD network. And actually, it's not that long story. The first real network is from DARPA in the year 2002. Mainly with a switched node and different QKD systems around. We claim we have the first real network with trusted nodes. It was done at the CV-QKD project. I was also part of this project, and we demonstrated in Vienna the first QKD network with 6 nodes and then 8 devices or so. Improved version was then demonstrated in Japan also already 10 years ago, and many of the players which are still around, so to say, have been developed their system for CQC and demoed them for Tokyo. As I said before, this was a slide, by the way, from Eleni, the first Infoshare. I lost my good slide, so I need to copy and paste a screenshot just 2 minutes before 1 o'clock. So please allow me this problem. I just discovered quite on time. You see, this is a really long 2,000 kilometer long backbone link, and now they want to extend this QKD link to really a big mesh network to include also the big cities in the mainland and not only the coastal areas. And additionally, they also implemented QKD satellite, which also achieved successfully to distribute entangled photon pairs, but also to use as a trusted node, flying first over China and then over Austria, and then distribute the key between Graz area and one of these base stations in China. Very impressive results. It's a little bit the front run of oral QCI. Europe has a slightly different approach, but we can discuss it later. Now I come to the slide with the trusted nodes, because the QKD system generates some symmetric keys, as you know, at a relatively short distance, say 100 kilometers, something like that. And with the secure key, you could use, if you want to use it in a fully secure ITS way, you could use this is information theoretically secure way. You can encrypt some user data with the one-time pad, send it over classical communication to the POP side, and then POP can decrypt it. But of course, as you know, due to this low key rate, secure key rate of QKD, this QKD, the key rate would be really low. One of the way is to decrease the security a little bit, but the ASD is still quantum safe. This is the point. So even when we use some classical algorithm and this is very much true for future post-quantum algorithms as well, the overall system will remain quantum safe. But it's short distance, so what could we do? We could take another QKD system and communication system, would put it back and back, and then the data would be encrypted here, decrypted on this station, then they're here again in plain text. This is why this trusted node need to be named trusted node. And then one could, for the second link with the second key, could encrypt it, send it over the line, and decrypt it again. This scheme is not the best you see it anyhow. The user wants to have a kind of end-to-end classical communication. And of course, because of this communication could be at different fibers, different media, and so on. So the QKD systems need not only simply to put back on back, because here we have the problem in the key stores, one need to combine the different keys in order to distill an end-to-end key. And one can do it for short, for small networks. In this respect, in this way, just to encrypt one key by the second one, send an XOR combination to the second user, and this one can really derive the key 1 in order to XOR this key 1, XOR key 2, XOR key 2, and then the key 1 pops up, and so the user can use it for this AES encryption, decryption. When you would stack it for larger distances, you suddenly realize that you have a big asymmetry, there's a complexity at one side, and it's not the best options as showed you before. So that is that first of all, one needs to have a key store before the encryptors, because then the pass over the QKD system can not only be one, but you can use different passes and different ways to distribute the key, for instance, over satellites, over terrestrial. So there needs to be a common key established. And during CQQC, we derived a new scheme where a quantum random number, which is then later on used as a secure key for AES, is then used as a signal to be transmitted. Here, this original quantum random number pops up again, and then it's fed to the key store for the AES encryptors. And this is the way we believe future QKD networks will work on. Still, it could be that for future systems, when you think about terabit on some communication lines, the QKD could be still too less. And so it's also possible to really to put another layer of QKD and AES distribution in between, and so it's possible to distribute the keys with higher rates. But this is everything. This is also not standardized or something like that. We are just working on that scheme, also not on that, but on the previous one at Open QKD. But at the end, it was really found out in CIVIC and began to be discussed there. I'm coming now to the network planning part. It's the fourth part. We did it together with the Deutsche Telekom. I will go through, I still have time, it's, let's see how much time I will use. In Civic, we decided to define a kind of reference network. Sorry, and this is these ideas I presented ICTON year 2019, and there's a small presentation written, and please refer to this presentation if you want to have some more details. In order to know what to develop, we need first to analyze what is the situation. And there are different use cases with different implementations possible. And therefore, we decided to think about a reference network where we really secure the critical infrastructure of Deutsche Telekom. This is somehow a big node. I forgot the real number. How is it called? But this is a big city in Germany, and around you have some switches and network equipment, and this equipment need to be controlled at the management layer, and also there's a control plane where the different devices communicate by themselves. Now the management plane comes up. So these stations with human operators to be present all of the time, and they need to authenticate themselves to the nodes, and if the system would be broken, it's really a very critical situation, but you know that better than me, I guess. And the third possibilities were to use some keys at the data plane. We didn't look to this scenario because it was too complex, too many requirements and so on. But at the end, it's clear not single QKD will be spent between the network operation centers and the different switches, but we need to deploy QKD systems. But we need also to deploy QKD systems to reach every node. And now it's the question, which strategy do we have when we want, for instance, to deploy 36 QKD systems, or 38 QKD systems to 39 nodes, having 66 different possibilities and so on. And therefore, we defined again what to do. Sorry, this was just didn't expect the slide here. There was the situation. It's, as I said before, the management plane, the topology centralized, the control plane, it's the next neighbor, the data plane. We didn't look to it. We have different key refresh rates, so we need some different network, some different key rates for these different scenarios. What we did is we modeled the QKD link, very easy. We said back-to-back, Alice and Bob together, we have 50 kilobits, and then depending on longer links, this 50 kilobits will be reduced. I don't go through the other numbers here. Sorry for this messy slide, but now suddenly the network topology also has a number, which means the secure key rate kilobit per second. And now it's the question how to combine it. And we tried different algorithms. There's some numerical algorithms, thanks to a colleague of Deutsche Telekom. They came to this solution. Then we've seen that there are some nodes which are limiting, because you have a lot of different nodes need to be supported by keys. So these numbers are really divided by the number of nodes to be supported, and suddenly you end up with a number which is really lower than you expect beforehand when you think about at 50 kilobit or something like that. And so it's possible just to play around a little bit with the deployment, and then there are some different ways to combine or to populate the network with QKD systems. And we worked around with minimum spanning trees and shorting path trees and so on. And with different methods, we could really get different results. But we also have seen it's really very much dependent on the scenario. Okay, so I guess, yes, I have a few more minutes time. I hope to go through the Open QKD network slides. So as I told you before, AAT has the lead in this big European project, the Open QKD. It's the testbed project where we really want to populate different QKD systems. Just a moment. Sorry, my chat was closed, and so I didn't. I could go through them later on. Anyhow, I forgot.
Yes, Andreas.
So
we have open discussion, so we'll go for the questions.
Yeah. The project has 38 partners. It's now running 18 months, so we are close to the half time. We have 16 different test beds. We have initial 32 use cases, and from the project itself, we added another 8, I guess, and 9 more were coming by open calls. This is what I could also mention a little bit later. So we have many different high-end groups, QKD suppliers, partners, network developers, encryptor. Actually, this is really useful to really have everybody on board in order to foster this ecosystem that the different companies, universities learn really to communicate with each other. And it turns out that this is to unify the language gap. It was also not that easy. The partners are distributed all over Europe, and it's a lot of more details are there, but what I really want to come to is that our 4 main big test beds, Vienna, Boston, Madrid, and Berlin, really carries a lot of different use cases. Not only them, but we have many more test sites with developing their special software use cases and so on. So it's not the central test bed where the developer needs to go there, but we go out to the companies, to the people want to use QKD in order to distribute our QKD systems we have from the project there. Yeah, I skipped this slide. It's this is a European map with all the different sites we want to have populated at the end of the project. It will be extended from 36 to 42 months. And there are basically one test bed, it's already done. This is the Graz one. And I will not touch Berlin, Geneva, which is also very large, Madrid, the other ones, which also produce results because of lack of time, but mainly concentrate to this interesting use case from Graz, demonstrating the healthcare use case. It was also done with the University of Graz and the hospital there, because the high image data of cancer slides, where you cut them and you want to really find single cells there in order to find out which medicine the different ill people will get, really requests for high sensitivity, and also to distribute the data to different cloud storages. Yeah, I don't need to point what happened last week. And therefore we really distributed the data to different cloud storages, but with a secret sharing mechanism, which is also information technological secure. And the distribution, we use QKD for that, in order to distribute the data, which the medical university is generating the data, then it's saved in storages, and if the user, the hospital Graz, wants to get access, they need to get their shares, combine their shares, and use again their QKD systems to get the pictures then combined by these fragmentics boxes, which is also the cloud storage provider of the secret sharing methods, a partner of OpenQKD. The setup was like that. It's a small use case, and for the development of this use case, we use dedicated links. The next slide will show you some results of the speed, but it was only to develop the use case. In future times, of course, it will not happen that every use case will have their own QKD links, but they will connect to a much larger kind of quantum backbone in order to get the required keys for them. And so to say, this will be the difference between the demonstrations and what we're doing now. Is we want to get into this topic. We want to have the people playing around with this new technology, and if enough attention, enough use cases are coming together in Graz, for instance, not using only the use case for the hospitals, but also governmental military use cases, then the networks need to be much stronger and different as at the beginning. This is a little bit the problem, how to plan the network scenarios to get, so to say, to on board with lower data rate, but be extendable to higher ones. This is probably a big topic at the Digital Europe program, which should come out very soon. And these are the typical rates of QKD systems. At the beginning, one QKD system had some problems, and due to restart, we need to have found out that the connector was broken, and after repairing, everything was fine. Also, the temperature variation could not prevent the QKD systems from delivering secure keys. This is close to the end. This is a nice way that you see what happened in the last 20 years or so, close to 20 years, coming to that field, need to organize the first bank via QKD secured wire transfer, and it was just over 1.4 kilometers or something like that. And 15 years later, the QKD keys have been distributed over the world, more or less, over the Meteos satellite from the Chinese partner, Professor Zellinger. Okay, thank you. I think this was nearly everything I wanted to tell you. I just wanted to point you maybe at the end that at our homepage of OpenQKD, we will announce the next round, the second round of open calls very soon. And so you can also apply for a kind of newsletter, and in order to get connected and not fail to maybe send in a nice new small proposal. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Andreas, for a very interesting presentation. It was a really interesting one. We have 4 questions, actually more questions. So I think we can try for this from the beginning.
There are some questions. So Piotr, I expected you somehow.
No, we asked that the questions will be.
I want to go through the questions, right?
There is the first question is from Janos. Why do we need quantum?
I'm not sure. Yeah. So why do we need QNG? It was one of the questions just at the beginning. The QNG, right? The good question is used. For instance, here, it's really used to have a highly certificated checked keys, which is then really transferred to the users. I mean, also QKD keys should be high-end, but I learned, I'm not sure if this is true, there are random keys which are even not fully compatible with EAS or with something you want to do with it. And with having a QNG as an extra device, you can do a kind of quality of service in order to define the quality of the QKDs coming out of the quantum network.
Thank you, Andreas.
Yeah.
The next question was from Domenico. Could you please spend more word about 90%. The AES-256 refresh? Is
sorry,
integrated in the QKD terminal?
So sorry, Piotr, my loudspeaker was off, therefore.
So the question is from Domenico. Could you please spend more word about AES-256 refresh? Is AES-256 integrated in the QKD terminal?
Yes, thank you. Yes and no. It's an ongoing topic for research. It's really the point is that usually AES, as it used now, it's really the key exchange is really done very seldomly. And we have this advantage to increase the speed, and then now it's a question, how often do we need to refresh? When you look to some concentrations of NIST, they found out that approximately 1 after 1 terabit, you the epsilon that you get the collision is not 0 any longer, but increases somehow. And for high secure links, one could define a good change speed by each terabit another 256 key. And no, it's not integrated in the QKD terminal, and actually I believe it shouldn't be integrated because it's really a different layer. You don't want to have the QKD suppliers also distribute your user data, so to say. So it's if you don't need to trust them, because whoever operates the QKD network has, so to say, then the key, and it's a kind of different layer that these key are not known to them, but only to the operator of the communication data.
Thank you, Andreas. So the next question was from Kurosh, a question related to slide with QKD 4.0, the concept that you presented, and integration of QKD card in optical WDM node. Is there any standardization work cover this functionality? Which known vendors are going to support this, and what is the commercial availability?
Yeah. Yes, as I said, I wanted to say it's a kind of vision, so to say. The people working on the ecosystem have a vision of QKD pluggable. The system people want to bring their systems into this communication racks in a good way. And up to now, the standardization is just really very proprietary. So no, there are not really clear standards to follow, so to say. And to be honest, most of these communication systems, maybe I'm wrong, it's just my understanding, is they're very custom proprietary standards for the 19-inch systems anyhow, so to say. So each big players, I think about Nokia, Huawei, ZTE, Cisco and so on, have their own system, and probably the big ones need to do that. So the small ones, like university spin-offs, are probably not possible to integrate it.
Yes, thank you for the explanation, Andreas. And next we have a comment from Lars regarding the why so little activity in the Nordic countries. So I think that Lars asked this comment during the Open QKD presentation. So I'm not sure if Andreas, we can elaborate on some partners from Nordic. Why?
Yes. So it's a good question. It somehow, as the consortium was formed, true. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, we have some open calls. We call out loud to include these countries, but what I know, for instance, from Finland, they have a large focus to make superconducting quantum computation, for instance. And it could be that they decided more to go to the computation side, but I guess for the future or QCI, they will anyhow be part.
Yes, especially VTT is heavily involved in the computing part. And then Kurosh also asked one question regarding the term post-QKD, which is used in some papers. I'm not sure if Andreas, you can refer some way in that.
So sorry, the post-quantum. The post-quantum.
No, it's not post-quantum, but post-QKD. This is the exact term. Maybe it's some abbreviation or simplification.
Papers. No, to be honest, no.
It is, sorry, Peter. Lars is actually clarified it. I mixed it with some other terms, so just ignore it, please.
Okay, thanks, Kurosh. We have another question, this time from Manfred. What are requirements to enter the current and follow-up QKD testbed projects?
To have a good idea, to look to our homepage when the next call is open, so expected at beginning of June or something like that. If we manage to get the platform running, then future partners are asked to get in contact with us, get in contact with the testbed operators, or define some new testbeds. It's really depending on the level of research and development you have, and then write a nice proposal. We evaluate them, and so we expect to have 7 proposals, say 8 maybe, with up to 80 kilo funding, just really to transfer the research to the field. It's just a starting to go out of the lab and use it for the next level, TL level. Yes.
Yes, and I think, Andreas, we can add also here the comment that the QCI calls are also upcoming. They will be launched probably in May this year, and they will be open till September this year. So this will be also a big opportunity for all partners from Europe to engage in the QCI initiative and the calls. The QCI calls are not defined yet, so we have to wait till May to have all the information, but we still have to prepare for them, and I think it's a lot of work before September, since the deadline for the proposals.
Yes.
Another, I see, yeah, from Kostas, is GÉANT planning to organize a response to this call? Yes, there is initiative and the plan to do that, but for now, since we don't know the exact call conditions, this is a problem. It's hard to prepare exact proposal and coordinate every action. So that's why right now we need to have the common knowledge. What are the activities as Andreas presented? And just as the call will be launched, we need to analyze the exact conditions, and then we need to take actions. But certainly GÉANT has the plans, and actually in the second session with the Toshiba presentation, our colleague Mirko from Toshiba will quickly discuss the proof of concept that is planned with GÉANT for the under open calls in OpenQKD. Yes, so please, if we still have a little bit of time, so please feel free to add ask another questions or your comments, share your comments. Maybe one comment from my side regarding those QCI calls. We need to remember that this will be heavily coordinated with also the national initiatives connected with the QCI. So it requires common understanding and joint activities between the partners. So on one side, the partner needs to have clear national view on the QCI activity, and next, the cross-border links and the activities are also different aspects. So it is a little bit tricky. It will be from organization point of view, I think it will be difficult. So that's why we need to wait for exact call conditions in May.
True, but this could be a little bit late. So the advice I could give, just a little bit,
yes,
like the oracle, oracle a little bit. You need to find national partners very soon, because what I heard, the first round of calls are more on the national levels than on the international levels. It means try to get connected with your QKD players in your countries and try to start thinking about possible scenarios, what you could contribute, which strengths you have, and basically from your strengths try to write a kind of national proposals.
Yes, indeed. Good point, Andreas. Andreas, we have also one question from Darren from GÉANT. How stable does the underlying network infrastructure needs to be to ensure stable quantum key delivery?
It's depending on which QKD system you have, so to say. There, when you but what we have seen at Harvey, we've been in Madrid and put the systems to the field, and we have also, you will hear it from Quantique and Toshiba, whatever is sufficient for communication for telco systems should be sufficient for QKD systems at the end. Or on the other hand, a TRL level of the QKD systems, to say it's a high TRL system, it should be operated in any conditions, you know, from practical evaluations from your side.
Yes. Thank you, Andreas. So I think if we don't have any other questions, comments, we can conclude for a short break, a short coffee break. I'm not, Xavier, I think we can present also during the break the next InfoShares, I think.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Andreas, for your presentation.
Thank you. It was a lot of time for you and effort to explain all the issues.
No, it was a pleasure to distribute my knowledge to you. Yes.
Thank you, Andreas.
Okay, I hope to see my screen. Yes, we just take the opportunity to make an advertisement of others events that we prepare. So there will be a workshop on network management monitoring on the 24th of March. After that, there will be a European persona user workshop in the middle of April. And now we plan also to have a meeting related to tools for campus network management as a service on the 28th of April. So with this, we can have our coffee break. And when do we start, Piotr?
Yes, there is also one comment from Erwin questions.
Yes.
Are there any NRENs coordinating the national responses to the EuroQCI call in your country? I know that several, I think NRENs were asked to join that activity. So it's hard for me to say in which state it is. So how heavily the
Xavier,
NRENs
we see your Skype screen.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
I'm not sure how many partners are, how many NRENs and how heavily they are involved in the national QCI initiatives, but certainly thank you, Kostas. But exactly, some NRENs were already asked to participate in that activity and submit comments and proposals. So it is under discussion in each member state.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, for that. I'd love to know if there was more, you know, or you know, how many NRENs and what their engagement is.
Yeah, maybe it is a good topic to investigate how many we did ask at some point for that. So we probably need to get back to that discussion. Because it relates to the national level, so it's a difficult topic, but thanks for the comment. I think we should have more details on that. Yeah, so thank you. So we can, I think, conclude for a short break right now. Hello, I think we can continue with the presentation, with the second session. We have 3 talks, one from Christian, the second one from ID Quantique, and from Toshiba colleagues. And the first one, I think, Rudolf, if you can introduce kindly Christian.
Yeah, of course. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rudolf, thank you.
Perfect. So hello, everybody. Please let me introduce you the next speaker, who will be Christian Panigl, who is the head of Aconet and also Vienna Internet Exchange, based at the University of Vienna since 2008. And maybe, as you probably know, Christian is in charge of the Vienna Internet Exchange, so VIX.at, since its creation in 1996. And also he has been heavily involved in the development of the Aconet network, so Austrian NREN, Austrian Research Network, since 1986. What is important for today's presentation is that under Christian's supervision, in the years 2017 and 2018, the Aconet backbone topology has been redesigned to better support national collaborations between various Austrian regions. So following this direction, it was possible to support latest technological advances and emerging technologies like QKD is. So Christian, the talk is yours.
Thank you, Rudolf. Thank you, Christian, for sharing the time and presentation for us.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. This very brief talk will just serve as an example how a small NREN like ours thinks being able to support these QKD or QCI time and frequency activities in general. So thanks to Andreas Poppe, who gave a lot of insight into the QKD project itself. I just will focus on what our thoughts are as NREN operator. So I try to share. Can you see anything?
We can see your calendar.
My calendar, okay, that's interesting. Oh, okay, now it should be better.
Yeah, we don't see.
So full screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Yes.
Can you also see my pointer?
Yes, Christian.
Okay. Well, okay, it's automatically forwarding. That was not intended. Let's skip. Sorry for that. And keep it like that. I don't know why it's forwarding. For those who are not knowing us, ARCONET is the Austrian National Research and Education Network, and we have a very broad user base. It's not only the universities and higher education institutions, but also the Austrian school network is using us as a backbone. Museums, educational, cultural institutions are connected, and also the health sector in some parts at least. And which is really special is that I think all of the ministries and federal chancellery, presidential office, and all the provincial governments are connected to ARCONET. So we have a broader user base than most of the other NRENs, which also involves us from time to time into national security research projects. And so we got in touch with, for instance, with the projects led by AIT and others. There are more specialities of ARCONET. The one is that ARCONET is not a legal entity, but it's a service operated by legally represented by the University of Vienna and operated by a small team at the Vienna University Computer Center. And we have a steering group, which is a legal entity. That's an association. It's called the ARCONET Association. But the ARCONET Association has nothing to do with the operations, with the actual operations of the network. That's just a little bit background information why we behave like we do. This is our current topology. And as it was mentioned already, we took care of redesigning the current topology a little bit in the around 2017 to make sure we have short links available between more or less all the regional areas in Austria. Wherever you see these gray lines, that's fiber optic network, which is currently our current network owner and operator is Telekom Austria, A1 Telekom Austria, and the current model is something like network as a service. So we have dedicated fibers and dedicated DWDM equipment in place. That one is operated by A1 Telekom Austria, and from the layer 2 upwards, the operations is with us. So at the University of Vienna, ARCONET team. At the original tender 2007, we already made sure that on all our backbone relations between the various regions, so for instance, from Vienna to Linz, from Linz to Salzburg and so on, to Innsbruck, Salzburg, Innsbruck and so on, we have not only this fiber pair which is used for the data network, but also a spare fiber pair available for projects and technology changes and similar activities. With our upcoming tender, we will make sure that this is even improved. The availability of this spare fiber principle is even improved. Our customer relations, as with most of the NRENs, primarily via the IT departments of the participating organizations. But we more and more are interested in direct input from researcher community like the high performance computing community, grid, quantum communication, and so on. And recently, since a few years, we identified these special demand research groups, the quantum communication research and the optical time and frequency networks community. And we keep in touch with them and try to help them and to make available whatever we can for their research. So specifically fiber optic components, fiber links, and try to coordinate also these different projects to avoid unnecessary duplicates. So the most current developments we are facing is that we are tendering now for a new Arconet NREN fiber optic backbone. As I mentioned, we will more or less keep the same topology as I showed before. So that's our target topology. It might be a little bit different, but I think from the principle, it will be the same as we have it now. This contract will be in place will be active from mid-2022. And it will again include spare fiber pairs on all main backbone legs. The framework itself might be available a little bit earlier, so from Q4 2021, this year already. So whenever we need additional infrastructure to support specific projects, we might probably use this framework already from Q4 2021. I hope this will match the demands from the quantum community, and we can make available additional links there through this framework. And there is another project which was detected by a group of quantum researchers, primarily at the University of Technology in Vienna, which supposed to use infrastructure funding from the FFG, from one of our funding bodies, for research and development infrastructure funding, and let the Arconet Association as a legal body apply for these funds and let them coordinate and distribute the available funds over the parties who are interested in getting additional opportunities for extending network components, for adding hardware, and so on. And those project partners are primarily the University of Technology in Vienna, Austrian Academy of Science and University of Vienna, University of Innsbruck, and the BEV, which is the Metrology Institute in Vienna, the Austrian National Metrology Institute in Vienna. So this project, this infrastructure funding project, is intended to complement our backbone tendering process and to enable the new backbone infrastructure specifically for CLONETs and EuroQCI related research. So that is the current activities we are facing and our contacts we have with the Austrian quantum and time and frequency community. Any questions?
Thank you, Christian. Yes, please feel free to ask any questions to Christian.
And just a question, Christian, are you going to use the same network model as you are using today with buying the fiber infrastructure and the equipment by yourself, but operating by A1 or a third-party operator, or are you going to do it by yourself?
Well, that's not finally decided. We tendered primarily for the fiber, but there is an option that the winner may also provide the equipment. But we leave it open if we take this option within the tender, or if we are using the GÉANT framework for optical equipment and buy the equipment by ourselves. But of course, we will need some kind of operational agreement between the fiber owner and ourselves for operating all the network, for getting access to the repeater stations. This is specifically also important for the QKD community, as I understand. They have to be able to install equipment in the repeater stations because the fiber legs between our own POPs are too long for current technology. So we need to find ways to accommodate all this. It's not guaranteed that we can support this on all our legs, but we will try to get a network which is supporting this community on as many legs as possible.
Thanks, Christian.
Yeah, thank you.
And just a side comment. We ourselves, we are a very small team of network operations staff. About 6 to 7 people are administrating both networks, the Austrian National Academic Network and the Vienna Internet Exchange. So we are not really involved ourselves in research or deployment of quantum communication things, but we try to get as close as possible to those communities, find out what they need, and try to accommodate this project as good as we can.
It means that it will be there will be 2 parallel fiber network, one dedicated to quantum, one for data.
Yeah, we follow in principle the model which also the Italian colleagues have found. So we are not trying to squeeze everything onto the operational fiber pair, which might be possible for the time and frequency community, but seems not to be possible currently for the quantum key distribution projects. So therefore we try to get one operational fiber pair with our own equipment or with the equipment provided by the fiber operator, and the spare fiber pair is then available for the research community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Christian. We have one question also from Joseph. Please, who will operate AcuNet infrastructure?
Sorry?
Joseph asked a
AcuNet.
question. Who will operate AcuNet infrastructure?
The project lead will be at the University of Technology in Vienna, but of course in close cooperation with ourselves and the fiber operator. This has to be coordinated between all the parties who are involved. So it's not that AcuNet is meant as a production network. It's a research project, and the funding for this project is for research and development infrastructure. So it's a joint effort of all the project partners to get this research infrastructure running. It's not, for me, it's not really decided on the long run if AcuNet will be something like a national quantum network operator, or if this will be somebody else. We feel responsible as long as it's in the research area, and maybe it can be turned or migrated into an operational network in parallel to AcuNet, but that's not yet decided. Does this answer the question?
Thank you, Christian.
Hi, Joseph.
Thanks, Christian. And I think a question also from Xavier. Are there specific requirements to host the QKD equipment, temperature, and general environmental conditions from your experience so far?
Well, actually, as it was mentioned before, we hope that the equipment which is going to be installed in this repeater hut specifically will not have any more specific requirements than the telco equipment which is usually installed there. If they have higher environmental requirements, then we might check from POP to POP or from station to station if these are able to be provided. So it's not, for me, it's not yet clear which kind of equipment will be installed along the lines for the various projects and for the various project phases and so on. So it has to be looked at from occasion to occasion.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian. So I think we don't have any more questions. So I think we can proceed with the presentation from our colleagues from ID Quantique, Pejman Panahi. Pejman is a very experienced person. He was working for different companies, for Ericsson, for Versatel, H1 Telecom, Swisscom, and now he's with the IDQ in Switzerland, where he joined in 2016. And he's leading the QRNG product development and sales team. And he's also in the charge of global market and business development with the main focus on academia, government, defense, healthcare, gaming, and similar use cases. So Pejman, if you can, thank you for your time and for your effort to join us today. And if it's possible, we can listen to your presentation.
Sure. Thank you so much, Piotr, for the introduction. It's a really pleasure to be here, and I will go through my presentations. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share the screen and see if I can. Okay. I think many of you and the audience, they already know ID Quantique. If you don't mind, I would go through it very quickly and tell you a little bit more about ourselves and what we do for those who don't know us. ID Quantique has been founded in 2001. It's a spin-off of the University of Geneva. And in that time, in 2001, it was started by 4 scientists who were working in the University of Geneva. And then they have some ideas in that time about the QRNG, and then they realized that maybe they should commercialize that, and then basically start to introducing to the market. And you can imagine in that time, in 2001, it was a very pioneer thinking to go in the quantum and make it commercializing the product. And now after 2 decades, we are still there, and we have a different products, which I will tell you a little bit more. But at the moment, we have our headquarters in Geneva, in Switzerland, and we have also offices in Seoul and in Boston. We are about 110 people at this time, and then we have a very R&D driven company. We have investment coming from SK Telecom and also from Deutsche Telekom. The company itself, it has 2 divisions. One is the quantum safe security division, and the other one is the quantum sensing division. I'm in charge of the quantum safe security division. That's why my presentation will be focused on this part. As a company, we have done a lot since 2001. And for instance, in 2001, we launched the world's first quantum random number generator. And later in 2007, world first real world QKD implementation, which happened here in Geneva, which we could secure a link that the Swiss government could send the result of the voting and ballots from one side to other side. The link is still pretty much alive, and they are doing it. In 2016, we launched a new product as a 3rd generation of the QKD. In 2018, we realized that if you want to target some other markets like automotive, mobile, or IoT, we must have our QRNG in the very small. It has to be small. That's why we launched a QRNG chip, which was very, very small, and it currently is used, is a ready product. In 2019, SK Telecom, we have started working with them to securing their 5G network. And also we are continue with this progress as a company. As you could see, as I mentioned it, this year is our 20 years of anniversary. And we are very proud because we are not only, we have some good product and the services, but also we have a lot of experience in our backpack, and which we can share it with our client, with our partners and with our friends. As you could see, I think everyone knows that I remember a couple of years ago, about 5-6 years ago, if I Googled something about the quantum, you couldn't find much about this. So only you could find it mostly about the papers. It was very scientific papers that it was worked in the academia sector. But now, after even in this less than 5 years, we will see, if you Google it now, you could see that, you know, there are lots of information available in the different field of quantum technology, and which is great. And even when you see it here, you could see there is a lot of basically investment there, and each country is starting to investing a lot in this field. It means that, you know, this really quantum is this. That's why we name this decade as a quantum decade, and we will continue with that, and in this trend will go up. I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about the quantum random number generator. Quantum random number generator, as you know, it is very important to have a quantum or true random number generator, because if you have a true random number generators, then it means that you have a strong keys. If you have a strong keys, then it means that you have a good crypto system. And this is something that you need it if you want to secure, if you want to have a very good security in your infrastructure. What we do it right now, in the past 20 years, we have, as I mentioned it earlier, we have it 3 different series or families of our product. One is a Quantis chips, which there are 3 of them, and they have passed a lot of certifications, and it is ready. And also we have a Quantis modules, which is in the different form factors. You could see it here in this table. And also in the Quantis appliance that we have, normally it can be connected to a switch, which can be serving multiple applications simultaneously. And for mobile, for this one might ask why we want to have it, you know, on the mobile. Well, they are using it for the pay services, for cryptocurrency services, and for the authentication. And we are very proud to see that, you know, Samsung has started to using our QRNG chip in one of their products, and now they want to use it in another model. And we are hoping that in the next 5 years, the Samsung would use our product in all their products that they have. So on top of that, we have WinSmart, which is another company that are using our product. And then also, this is very interesting that we will see more and more that mobile providers are interested in such a product. In terms of the quantum key distribution, we have, it can be different industries can benefiting from the QKD. You could see a couple of them, but in general, everybody can be your customer when it comes to the QKD. Academia, data center, healthcare, pharma, anyone who wants to cover and protect and security, they can go for using the QKD. We have 3 products in general. One of them is a Calavis 3, which is very interesting. It is we can call it as an open QKD platform, which is designed especially for the universities and academia and research institute. It has an interface to external detectors. It can be used. It has, you can have access to so many different parameters, which is, and also to the key where to the file where the keys are stored. On top of that, we have a Cerberus 3, which is another product. It can be used for the production, for the government, and for the telco, for the military. It's a closed box. It can be used for the different complex topologies like a ring, hub and spoke, and it can be used for the different system, for the DWDM to multiplexing the fibers. And we have the third one is the Calavis 300, which is an integrated platform, which is using also, it is a very interesting platform. Use cases and application. This is, I think this part would be kind of interesting. One of the common application for the quantum key distribution, as you know, is a point-to-point, or a company wants to connect the headquarters to the branches. And this is what we can use it, you know, it can be used for the point-to-point solution. But in order to do that, we need to work with the other partners. As you could see, we have started to working with a different partner here, and they are integrating their products with our system that they could, you know, has an interface between. I'm not going to do the names here due to lack of time, but you know, you could have access to this presentation that you could see what we do and what we are working with. And then One of the use cases that we are working, it was together with between the SIG, ADVA, and ID Quantic as part of the Open QKD project. That, as you could see, we are using the server history. It was connected to the ADVA, and then ADVA retrieved the keys, and then they could XOR it with what they with their own keys, and then they could secure the link. Another one, it was the Quantum Vault solution, basically project that it was also part of the Open QKD. And it was basically, the idea was that using SHAMU secret sharing for distributed safe storage. And also we used the QKD for securing transmission. And as you could see that if you have, we could have access to 3 nodes, you could recover the data. As you could see it here, here that it was many different partners and friends involved in this. It was very interesting project. On top of that, you know, we are also working from the commercial side, working in the Korea. That they are starting with the SK Telecom. They are trying to basically link using QKD to covering the backbone for the 5G network between 2 cities, 221 kilometers. The other one is 109 kilometers. And recently, one of the interesting part, it was Korea wants to secure the national infrastructure, which is 2,000 kilometers. And and now we are starting working with them. They are going to connect 48 government organizations. And then after we are finishing with this project, they would be one of the biggest that they have a QKD network after China. As you know, that China is very advanced in these Q-safe technologies. And I think Korea can see that they would be the next one in this field. Another interesting project that we were involved in this with other partners was that securing a link between Cambridge University to the BT Park campus, which I think it was also very interesting. And we were, as I mentioned it was different partners was involved, and we were extremely happy that we could be part of this. Well, this one was a picture, the last of the team. And well, that's it. So I just wanted to very quickly to tell us in 15 minutes what we do, what we have done. And I hope that I could cover it as much as I could. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pejman, for very nice presentation and the overview. We have a good question from Domenico. When you use AES-256 for symmetric encryption, do you actually employ something Diffie-Hellman to generate a shared secret from random number as TLS does for HTTPS? Do you have an alternative technique?
I have some answer, but I think because I don't want to tell you a wrong answer, which is not representing or the R&D that you would say, then I will find out and I will let you know. I don't have this answer at the moment on top of my head.
Okay, so we can take this offline.
Sure.
So please, thank you. I think we don't have any other questions. So again, thank you, Pejman, for your time.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
So now we can proceed to the apologies but I didn't say it before the presentation that both Toshiba and ID Quantic colleagues are important partners from the Open QKD project, because they do not only provide the infrastructure itself, but also are heavily involved in the standardization activities regarding the QKD technology itself. So right now, we can proceed to the kind talk with our colleagues from Toshiba. And we have actually 2 speakers today from Toshiba. It's Robert Woodward, who's a research scientist in the Quantum Information Group of the Toshiba Cambridge Research Laboratory, he's investigating the development of new QKD technologies and integration of that in the existing network infrastructure. And he also worked in the academia in UK, Australia, and researching nonlinear fiber optics and ultrafast laser physics. Apologies. And the second speaker will be Mirko Pitaluga. He would specifically, apologies. He will specifically talk about the proof of concept with GÉANT that was approved and will be conducted under the open call in Open QKD project. And Mirko is a researcher at Toshiba. He has started the research career there under Marie Curie program and the project QCall and aimed to promote the diffusion of quantum technologies across Europe. He supported Toshiba effort to enhance QKD performance at high loss regimes and contributing to the first implementation of the new twin field QKD protocol approach. And his research at the moment is focused on the increasing the reach and practicality of long distance QKD. Thank you. And I think, Robert, we can start with your presentation and we can then proceed to Mirko's part.
Okay, thank you very much, Piotr. Just let me share my slides.
So thank you both to you and Mirko for sharing the time with us.
Can you see the slides? Is that okay?
Yes, it is fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've had one or two connection problems in the Toshiba office, so hopefully it'll hold out for the duration of this talk. Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation. Toshiba, we're delighted to join and tell you a little bit more about our QKD systems. And for the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to tell you a bit about the design of these systems, some of the features and the performance, and then comment on some of the use cases we perform, so how you can actually integrate QKD into networks. And then Mirko Pitaluga will follow with a little bit more information about some of our more recent research results and actually trying to deploy this in the field too. So first, my single slide introduction to QKD at Toshiba. And I think it's worth mentioning that we've actually been looking at QKD as a company for around about 30 years now, starting with the foundation of the Cambridge Research Laboratory of Toshiba in the 1990s. Our interests actually span a range of areas in quantum, but it's really quantum communications, and particularly QKD, that's been a success story here. So as a research lab, we're still to this day very active in publishing and investigating new QKD protocols, new designs, and new ways of integrating this into networks. So mentioning some of our recent results would be surpassing the 10 megabit per second secure bitrate limit, exceeding 600 kilometers for a single hop of QKD, and also finding ways to integrate high bandwidth, so potentially some high power classical signals into your quantum networks too. And then building on these research successes, just last year we launched a new division, the Toshiba Quantum Technology Division, and this was with the aim of commercializing QKD and the launch of 2 of our QKD products. So you can find more information at our website there, and I'll tell you a little bit more now. So fundamentally, the Toshiba QKD system distributes keys between 2 remote nodes. What you do with the keys is up to the customer, but it's more than likely you'll feed these into an encryptor, be it a hardware encryptor, or indeed your own software. And this can then take in the quantum keys and user data in plain text format to form your ciphertext. So you can then communicate this maybe using AES, maybe using the one-time pad as your cipher. But when you communicate the secured data across a link, you have perfect security here. And this is ensured because you're using QKD keys as part of the encryption. The actual protocol that we use is known as T12. It's Toshiba's own protocol, which is modified or based on a modified version of BB84. So I won't go into the full technical details. It was already mentioned in this morning's session, a little bit about the differences of protocols, but I'll just mention it's a discrete variable, a DV protocol, and yeah, based on the original BB84 design. So the systems themselves, if you get one, they'll look something like you see here. So each system comprises a transmitter and a receiver unit. That's at the bottom layer you can see there. And this is what would connect to the fiber channel between your two sites. And they're also included with a control server. So each unit has its own server for running the software. And the entire technology stack here, it's a 3U height if you were fitting it into a 19-inch rack, and they both weigh less than 15 kilograms. So the design here has been made to make it very compatible with existing new network and computational data center type environments. In terms of using the system, the control servers come with all the software and configuration installed out the box. So it should be a plug and play installation for the end user. In terms of actually using the system, we provide a graphical user interface so the user can obviously start and stop the system, but also look at the performance in real time and view the logs for historical data as well. And in terms of using the keys, we also integrate a key management system into the control server. And this means that if you're connecting it to an encryptor for pulling keys, you can then request them using the standardized ETSI 014 standard. So for those who aren't aware of this, it's a widely agreed upon RESTful API, which is used for transferring keys from QKD systems to encryptors. It's implemented by many of the major players, such as Adver and Cernitas already, so that when you connect to our QKD system, you can request keys via this standardized approach. And as Piotr mentioned, Toshiba is also very active in developing these standards as well. So for the operation, like I mentioned, it's a plug and play installation. We used to always provide a Toshiba engineer to deploy systems wherever we were going. Unfortunately, COVID made that obviously quite difficult, but this has also been quite a good opportunity to really make sure and to demonstrate that these systems can be installed by an end user. You don't actually need a Toshiba engineer there in person to do it. So the pandemic's been a good challenge, but also an opportunity to really demonstrate this. I'll mention more about that in the use cases at the end. But in order to make it plug and play, we've had to work hard to develop hands-free automatic alignment and stabilization routines. So this means when it's inserted and connected up, the user clicks start, and no matter what the link length is or the loss of the fiber, the system will automatically optimize its internal parameters to give you the best possible key rate. And not only when it starts up, but also over the long term. And this is achieved. You can see a little schematic there showing the general idea. We integrate random stabilization pulses into our pulse train as part of QKD. So this has no impact on the security of the system, but we can use these information from the stabilization pulses to, in real time, keep Alice and Bob well synchronized and also optimize any parameters that may need tuning. Perhaps if the line changes, or like I say, when you're working with real fiber, you don't know, maybe some building work will start nearby, maybe part of the fiber is a spool in direct sunlight, so the temperature changes. You do need this sort of active stabilization to make sure that in real world environments, you can still perform continuously with high performance. And then the final technology we use is a lot of high precision temporal and spectral filtering. And this is because you need to be able to very precisely distinguish the quantum signals from the classical signals. And if you're combining the two together. So we have two products available now, two variants. And before I introduce these, I'll just briefly mention that when you're doing QKD, there's multiple wavelengths you need to think about. There's obviously the quantum wavelength itself. This is the wavelength of light that you send your single photons in. But you also need a classical service channel. And this is the case for all QKD, so that the two units can perform post-processing. So you heard mentioned earlier things like sifting, privacy amplification. And these are factors that need to be considered, as well as if the user has any data on the fiber network they want to, maybe their own data channels or service channels from networking equipment. So the two variants that we offer are called the long distance QKD system. This has a 1550 nanometer quantum channel, so in the C band, and this is actually the same wavelength band as the service channels. And alternatively, we offer a multiplexed QKD system, which has a 1310 nanometer quantum channel. And I'll describe the differences in a bit more detail next, but I will just point out that in both variants, we include all of the filtering and any required multiplexing inside the QKD boxes themselves. So in terms of the installation, the user doesn't need to buy expensive and potentially bulky additional networking equipment. Everything you need to integrate the system into a network is included in the box. So this is a bit more detail about the two systems. Starting at the top with the long distance system, you can see we use a 1550 nanometer quantum channel, and we generally recommend having a dark fiber for the quantum channel to keep it separate from the classical light. And this is because this system really is optimized for the maximum possible distance and also the highest possible secure key rate. So typically you could get to 120 kilometers with this, and with a 10 dB loss, that's 50 kilometers of fiber, you'd be looking at a key rate of at least 300 kilobits per second, which is more than enough for regular key refresh if you're doing something like AES. The second product, this is really targeting existing fiber networks, particularly lit networks. If you already have user data on them, this is where you maybe haven't got the ability or the financial resources to run a new dark fiber between your two endpoints. And here we can basically integrate everything or multiplex everything onto a single pair of fibers, or if the customer's request, even a single bidirectional fiber. And this is really enabled by, say, the filtering that technology that we've integrated, and also by moving the quantum channel a little bit further away from the service channels and the user data channels. We're able to multiplex many wavelengths onto the same fiber. So you could have user data, the QKD service data, and the quantum channel themselves all on the same fiber pair. The max range is a little bit lower, to around 70 kilometers, and the key rate is a little bit lower too, because fiber is intrinsically more lossy at 1310, but you're still working in excess of 40 kilobits per second for a 10 dB loss channel. So just finally, just to mention two use cases that we've been involved in. The first one was developing the UK's first industrial quantum secure network. So this was a real production network between two smart manufacturing sites in Bristol in the UK. You can see the little schematic in the bottom left. And previously, they'd been communicating very commercially sensitive, so sort of top secret IP-related data between them using a trusted courier. So they'd use a USB drive to transport data, but they were looking for a more secure, more practical solution. So Toshiba, in collaboration with BT, provided this 10G encrypted link secured by QKD between the two sites. And one of the real novelties here was it was using all off-the-shelf equipment, and it was entirely compatible with national network infrastructure. So the team in Bristol, they're a manufacturing site, they're not network engineers, they're not quantum people. They didn't want to have a lot of expertise needed to do this. They just wanted to approach their BT, British Telecom, that's the network operator nationally in the UK. They just wanted to say, we'd like a network service. They go to Toshiba and say, we'd like a QKD system, and the two can seamlessly integrate to give the end user effectively a transparent 10G encrypted link, but safe in the security that the keys are provided by QKD, and therefore it is quantum secure. And this entire deployment was done using a single fiber pair with all channels. They had existing channels on the network that we couldn't move, all over the same fiber. And you can see the picture in the bottom right just showing the actual installation in the data center. So it looks just like standard network equipment. The QKD system there, it's a slightly older faceplate, so it looks a little bit different to the one I showed you earlier, but it's the same hardware inside the box. And this is just showing 6 months worth of data, so very stable performance, averaging over a megabit per second here for the 7-kilometer link. And then just finally, I won't say too much about this because it's been mentioned before already, but we were very pleased to provide devices for the Open QKD deployment in Graz. This was combining Shamir secret sharing with QKD, so a full end-to-end secured and even for storage secured crypto system. And again, we deployed two systems here, achieving key rates in excess of 1.9 megabit per second and capable of operating with the needs of the user's data. So in that case, this was medical secrets. And we're very pleased to be a part of Open QKD and looking forward to do many more use cases this year and next year. And you can see a selection there just showing how you really can integrate QKD really seamlessly into existing networks for everything from medical data, government data, you're combining it with 5G networks, and also looking at other technologies such as satellite QKD and post-quantum crypto as well. So with that, I'll thank you for your attention. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I think we just have one quick question from Lars. How does user check that it is intrinsically secure and not just a black box of promises?
So it's a very good question. And indeed, this is, I think, a question for the QKD community as a whole. The solution would be something like device independence QKD. That's the only way you can have true trust in a black box. That as a technology is nowhere near being commercialized yet. So as it stands, the end user has to trust that the product they've bought is secure. Unfortunately, I think as it stands, all QKD technologies and all QKD products, the end user has to have trust in the device. That said, when QKD is running, they can see the performance and they can see all the data that we record, so they can see that it's operating as expected. But there is a fundamental assumption in QKD that you trust your hardware, at least with the current generation of kit.
Yes, we have also a question from Ivana. Robert, is the equipment of ID Quantic and Toshiba interoperable? I think we can say a few words about the standardization that both of you are involved. And the ETSI works. I think just a quick comment. I think we can.
Sure. So just a quick comment. I think we both use the same ETSI 014 standard for pulling keys. So if you're developing a complete network, they're both compatible. And I won't say much more, but within Open QKD, this is actually an area of great interest, and there are work packages ongoing looking at interoperability between different vendors. So it's a work in progress for sure.
Yes, and from Rob, we have questions. What is needed in terms of physically securing the sites and the interfaces between QKD equipment and the equipment receiving the key?
So another, when you're performing QKD, a given assumption is generally that you trust your end users. You can never be sure that there's not someone looking over your shoulder at your key, when you use a computer. And the same applies, again, for all QKD systems. You have to assume that once the systems are installed in the end location, someone doesn't go and tamper with the actual hardware in the endpoint. We're doing end-to-end protection, getting the key from one side to the other. We aren't involved in securing your data center or actually how someone would use the keys. I will say that the service we provide are hardened. We follow best practice in security. So if someone were to get access to your data center, maybe if it was physically insecure, then they wouldn't be easily able to tamper with the servers. They are secured to computational best practices.
Yes, thank you, Robert. So I think we don't have more questions for that. So I think we can quickly proceed to the Mirko part. So this is just a reminder, Mirko will present an assumption and the goals of the proof of concept that is planned under the Open Call and Open QKD project that is a joint work between the partners.
Yeah, thank you very much, Piotr. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Mirko.
Fantastic. I'll try to share the screen now. Good. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me today here to discuss about our collaboration, the collaboration between Toshiba and GÉANT in the context of the European Open QKD project. Today, I will discuss our collaboration that is about long distance quantum key distribution, and we're aiming to do that over the GÉANT fiber network. And I'm collaborating with this, with Piotr, Domenico, and Gui of GÉANT. So my main goal today will be introducing the main characteristic and aspects of this project, which are mainly related to the type of QKD protocol we are aiming to implement. So first, the first thing I want to mention here is characterizing one of the main technical aspects of QKD that is related to the limitation of its performances over distance. A standard point-to-point QKD system will have a network topology like the one that I show here on the top left. So I will have the two users that want to establish a key. This scheme named Alice and Bob are connected directly, and by the very nature of QKD, by the way of how we encode information, the information that we need to generate the secure key that is then used for cryptography purposes, we have that these signals cannot be amplified classically. So we have that the performances of QKD are inherently limited by the losses of the communication channel. There is a strict theorem that states that the maximum key rate that is achievable by a point-to-point QKD system, like the one figure here, is proportional to the channel transmission. In order to show this and give you a better idea of what I mean by this, I'm showing the graph on the right here. So in this graph, you can see the key rate of QKD experiment over the channel losses. So you can think of it of how long is the channel over which you execute QKD. And here the points are basically the state-of-the-art QKD experiments carried out so far. And as you can see, all the points, all the experiments lies below this blue line here. This blue line here is basically the theoretical limitation in terms of performances of QKD. So if our aim is to get a secure key at very high losses and a high key rate at high losses, we have a problem, because with current technology where we stand at the moment, we don't have a way to reach this part of this graph, right? A way to overcome this problem would be that of using a quantum repeater. So by using a quantum repeater, the maximum key rate achievable over distance changes, and you can see that the limitation moves from the blue line to the magenta line in the graph. And as you can see, if we had a quantum repeater, we will have at our disposition also this section of the graph. So we will be able to send to generate a secure key, a higher secure key at longer distances. The problem is that with today's technology, we are not yet able to implement a quantum repeater. So at the moment, the only solution that we have to this problem is the implementation of the twin field QKD protocol. The twin field QKD protocol, differently from a solution involving a quantum repeater, is a QKD solution that is feasible with today's technology. And in the graph here, I'm showing the key rate that one can generate using TF-QKD. And as you can see, it has the same scaling of a QKD with a quantum repeater. And therefore, we can reach an area of this graph that is not otherwise achievable. So in fact, to summarize this kind of introduction of why TF-QKD and why what I'm looking at the moment, we are looking at Toshiba and GÉANT together is important. The take-home message is that doing this protocol here, so TF-QKD is the only way that we can overcome this blue line here. So the only way we can reach high protocol performances at high distances. So in this slide here, I summarize then how we actually do this. So what is the concept behind the QKD protocol? So differently from other point-to-point QKD schemes where the two parties that want to communicate are directly connected, in the type of protocol that we are trying to implement here, we have that the two parties that want to communicate, so Alice and Bob in these schemes, both prepare some signals, and they send them to a central location, in this scheme, Alice. The characteristic of this scheme is that the encoding of the two users the information is encoded by the users in forms of optical fields, and the information extraction, the central node, is done through first order optical interference. So interference of optical fields that will interfere at the central beam splitter here, and will give us an outcome only one photon that will be detected here, but by single photon detectors. One characteristic of TF-QKD is that it's measurement device independent, but I will not go into too much into details for the purpose of this talk. And the other, well, again, the point to stress here is that by using this configuration here, we have a different scaling of the key rate with the distance, and a scaling that is much more favorable than the other configuration available to date. So the next question is, how do we actually implement this scheme in the lab with physical components? So here I'm mentioning 4 main ingredients for actually being able to implement the protocol. So the first fundamental ingredient is the ability to generate twin fields, so weak coherent pulses that have a similar phase from 2 space-separated locations. And on the right, I'm showing what are the ingredients, and on the left, I'm step-by-step building a complete TF-QKD setup in a way. The second component that we need is that we need to encode in phase and modify the phase and intensity of these optical fields. Then we need to send these optical fields through the communication channel to the central node where they will interfere. Another thing that we have to take care is that we need to stabilize this communication channel, or quantum channel as I'm calling it here. And finally, in order to distill a key, we will need to detect the single photon that will be produced by the interference at the central beam splitter in this scheme. It's quite important to stress that among all these 4 ingredients, the number 2 and 4 that I mentioned are kind of standard practices in QKD. So in QKD, we already do phase encoding and intensity encoding and single photon detection. So those kind of tasks are not a technical issue or a problem. The 2 new requirements of this protocol that instead are new, and that makes the realization of this protocol more difficult than other TF-QKD, protocols, are the elements number 1 and number 3. So the generation of twin fields from 2 space-separated sources and the stabilization of the quantum channel. And just to give you an idea of what I mean of when I say that this is a difficult task, when I say that we have to stabilize the quantum channel, I mean that we need to have a sub-wavelength control. For example, if we have a system that is built to communicate over 500 kilometers, we need to have a sub-wavelength control over the whole distance. And this task can be compared to have a sub-millimeter control over a distance between the Earth and the Moon. And as you can imagine, this is quite a demanding task to achieve. So apart from, now that we have seen more or less what we are aiming to build, here I'm showing some practical results. So this protocol has been introduced 3 years ago, and we have already many implementation of it. We can differentiate between 3 ways of experiments doing this protocol in the real world. So let's say the second wave of experiment, the first wave of experiment were proof of principle concepts. The second wave of experiments were lab demonstration of the protocol. And here on the left, I'm showing the 2 of these experiments that were done by a Chinese research group that achieved the remarkable result of establishing a secure QKD link over the distance of above 500 kilometers. So here I'm reporting the references to the work with a screenshot from their work. And on the right, I'm showing the secret key rate points over distance obtained with their in those researches. The last wave of TF-QKD research has been related instead with the implementation in the real world of this protocol. And as early as the beginning of this year, so 2021, we had 2 research papers published on the archive where the authors were able to implement this protocol in the real world over the remarkable distance of 420 and 511 kilometers. And I'm adding here the key rate obtained in those implementation. And it's worth in this it's worth comparing these results. So on the right, on the key rate graph, with the maximum with the best result that were obtained with standard QKD. And now I'm showing those with squares in the figure. So as you can see, this was the maximum distance that was achieved when by using standard QKD, and by using TF-QKD, these groups were able to improve the maximum distance by roughly 100 kilometers. So bringing the maximum achievable distance from 400 kilometers to 500 kilometers. One important thing to stress here is that all these experiments from the implementation point of view are extremely similar, and in particular they use the same phase stabilization method. And this is actually where our recent work and research jumps in. So with our collaborators, my collaborators here at Toshiba, and through a collaboration also with the Italian metrology group, we did demonstration of the TF-QKD protocol in a lab environment and a proof of concept experiment in a field trial by using a different stabilization method. And with our techniques, we actually managed to improve even further the performances of the TF-QKD protocol by reaching the distance of 600 kilometers for the first time. So by improving by roughly 200 kilometers over the maximum distance achieved by standard QKD, and by improving by roughly 100 kilometers over the performances achieved by TF-QKD, but with another stabilization technique. So the main difference between our implementation and the implementation that I've shown in the previous slide are the type of stabilization technique that we use. In our experiment, we use 2 wavelengths sent through the same communication channel for doing an active stabilization. And this allows us to basically have an improvement both in magnitude of the key rate and maximum distance that we can achieve. And so this was pretty much an overview of what can be done with this new protocol. And the next step is actually talking about our collaboration with GÉANT, because at this point we developed the technology, we tested it, and we got pretty interesting results. And we were very eager to collaborate now with GÉANT to see how to move out of the lab the kind of configuration and solution that we developed in at Toshiba. So the objective of our collaboration with GÉANT would be that of operating long distance QKD system in real world telecoms environment and real fiber, and realizing that on an European testbed. And this will carry several challenges, probably the biggest one of which is the identification of solution and strategies to simplify the protocol implementation. The target for this collaboration is completing an experimental demonstration by the end of this year or by the beginning of next year. And at the present stage, we are still in a discussion of the details of the implementation, but we are actively working on this. And thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to get any question if there are.
Thank you, Mirko. I think we can refer to the questions. We have a number of them, but I think we can. Please feel free, Pejman, if you feel also you can refer to those questions. Please feel also to answer. The first question from Janos is: did you have any experience or aware any tests with QKD on optical ground wire, high voltage energy transport system, or aerial optical cable?
No, that I'm aware of. I'm not even sure I am understanding the question here. Do you have an experience?
So it means Mirko, if the system was running on the cable that was installed in the power distribution line, so it was not buried cable but over.
Oh, I see. Well, when we talk about lab experiments, well, generally these experiments are carried over fiber spools and in rather controlled environments in terms of temperature and vibration. And in terms of lab, well, field trial experiments, in case of the experiments carried out by the Chinese researcher. So the one that I'm showing here now in this slide, here, I think these were buried optical fiber, but I'm not sure of the details of how much they were underground and with what kind of other cables they were traveling with.
Okay, Janos mentioned some publications, so we can refer to this. Just a quick question from Peter. Is the equipment based on DV or CV-QKD? I mean, I assume that this twin field equipment.
This is DV.
Okay. And I think important question from Domenico. I think it's about question for you and for Pejman. Please free to answer also. Is this very low rate suitable for real application for the secret keys? To which extent this very low rate is suitable for real applications? You can also refer to the satellite aspect, I think.
Yeah, well, this is not really my field of expertise, but as you can see, if we look now the graph that I'm showing here, so where I show the key rate in function of the distance, you can see that these are the circles here are the different results that we obtain different distances. So the secret key rate that you can generate decreases over distance. So there is a trade-off there on how much secret key rate you want to generate, you need to generate, and how long your communication single hole fiber channel can be long. But in terms of what is the what are the type of application that you can do with a key rate in the order of 1 bit per second? For example, if we are looking at our last point at 600 kilometers, we had an estimate that with this kind of bit rate of the secure key, you will be able to refresh your AES key several times a day. Well, this was what one expert of the field told me, but I wouldn't be able to say much more than that, unfortunately, on this regard.
Sure, thank you, Luca. Also, we have questions from Kuros. Does the repeater device regenerate only the QKD channel or the data channel too?
The repeater device, I guess he's referring to the slide, the very first slide here. So generally when when I mentioned repeater for in a quantum context, I mean a proper quantum repeater. That is a device that is designed to repeat quantum signal. So namely very low intensity optical pulses. And while when we talk about classical repeaters, we are talking about well, other type of devices such as EDFAs or devices like that. And they work in two completely different ways with completely different designs. And the point to stress here is that classical repeater will not work for a quantum signal. And and also when the kind of noise generated by a classical repeater, we call it classical, and I understand that it could be confusing for people in the standard optics community, but the use of that of an EDFA, for example, will have to be isolated from the use of a quantum repeater. Because of the noise that it would generate over a broad spectrum that will interfere with the signal carried at the wavelength used for the quantum signal, for example. I'm not sure I answer your question there. Yeah, you can drop me an email if you want a more clear answer.
Thanks. You did. Actually.
Okay.
Thank you, Lars, for the answer to Domenico. Exactly, we need the quantum channel just to send the keys, so the data rate needs to be analyzed differently, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question is from Rob. Do you expect a penalty from evanescent field coupling from high power levels such as Raman of signals in adjacent fibers in the same fiber ribbon and optical cable?
Yeah, I expect penalty, and I think where I stand now, where we in terms of implementation of this, I know that it is possible to execute this type of protocol, so twin field protocol, with fibers that travel adjacent to other to fibers where classical signal is transmitted. So there is some crosstalk there, but it can be kept under control. And I think that in terms of how precisely and how what we mean by keeping it under control, for example, I mean that generally what people do, they are careful of the on setting precisely the injection power, for example, of the classical signal in the for the fiber that travels adjacent to the fiber that we use for the quantum signal. By tweaking that power, we can try to minimize the crosstalk, and we can try, while at the same time keeping a stable connection on the classical fiber. So in a way, the answer to this question is we have to be careful for that, but it is possible to overcome that problem, and has been demonstrated already in, for example, the works carried by the Chinese researcher here, where their quantum signal was traveling alongside the classical signal. You're welcome.
Thank you. So please feel free to ask any other questions to Pejman or Robert or Mirko regarding the systems that they are developing and providing for the OpenQKD projects for different use cases. So I don't see any other questions. I think that before we still have a little bit time to before we can probably proceed to the open discussion. So I don't see questions to the speakers, further questions to the speakers. So we can still discuss the involvement in the European and national initiatives and regarding some practical implementations within the NRENs and the Testbook. So if you feel that you would like to raise some topics and discuss, please free to ask the questions. From my side, I think it's important what Andreas said, that before the QCI calls, it needs to be agreed on a national level. A very good comment from him. So the national strategy, the plan, and the project needs to be aligned, and then it can be discussed on a higher level within the cross-border QCI limits. So please free to state your comments or questions if you feel that you have any further comments. I saw that there were some questions regarding the standardization, so it was also one aspect of the presentations today. So it was just published on a European Commission side as a result of OpenQKD project, a short summary regarding the standardization work in within the QKD. This document is freely available. I will send it in the chat, so please feel free to download it, analyze it, and there is a concrete roadmap for the activities within the ETSI, and it is a very good document prepared by Dean colleagues, and of course all the equipment providers were involved here as a complement to the discussion that we had. So the PDF document with the analysis is at the bottom of at the bottom of the site. You can download the PDF with the documents. So I don't see any other questions at the moment. So maybe I will proceed to the last part. Just a quick information. I can show you the system that I'm running between the data centers in PSNC. Actually, it is in line with everyone today said, so it's not something that is completely different. Just a second. Yeah, so basically, as our colleagues described today, the basic part and the QKD system constantly analyzes the link, the channel between the data centers, the optical channel between the end nodes, the Alice and Bob. And you can see it's constantly monitoring the quantum bit error rate, the visibility of the system, the quality and the detection rate of the photons. And as a result, you have the secret key rate, which is of course depending on the optical link budget between the systems. So, and as I mentioned, the system is constantly checking the link, is aligning the detectors, the parameters of detection. So it's a time-consuming, maybe not time-consuming, but important step. The system needs to be, of course, synchronized. And what is also important that, to be honest, the quantum bit error rate is kind of the sensor itself. So based on the variations in the QBER and the changes, you can see how the fiber and the optical link between the Alice and the Bob changes. So it's also nice information for the system. So This is from the QKD point of view, a simple overview of the link which is running. Of course, the key management systems that were mentioned today, it's a different part. So just a short update from me.
So we we can see on your link that the key is exchanged each 2 minutes, something like this,
Yes,
or
it depends.
renewal each 2 minutes.
Yeah, it works like this, that the keys are stored in the buffer and they are exchanged. So the system is filling up the buffers with the keys. So and the actual keys from the buffer are exchanged. So the keys needs to be first filled in the internal, let's say, buffers.
So thank you for this demonstration. Is there any question about this for Piotr? So we reached maybe you would like to have some kind of questions and answer session now, Piotr?
No, I think I don't have any other questions, comments. So
okay. Yeah, I would like to ask one question to the audience. Is in our working group we are trying to identify what could help the NRENs to acquire some experience and so on. So there is during the last InfoShare a feedback about having a test bed. But having a test bed for a long time is very demanding because we need to have some hardware and it's quite complicated. So an idea was just it's just an idea, but we'd like to know if it could be interesting for you. Is to set up a test bed for a limiting time for a limiting duration for 1 month, for instance, and make some tests during this period. And so we have to identify how we could do this. It could be done thanks to simulations tools or something else. The idea was after that to identify which test could be done. And so my question is that would you be interested to take part during this month to either practice simply or make some your own tests if we set up such kind of test bed? So if you would be interested, use the chat to say yes, it could be interesting, or no.
Thanks, Xavier. It is important aspect because if we need to be prepared for the QCI calls with the deadline in September, it's not much time to prepare the strategy and coordinate every activity. So the upcoming months are especially till half of the year, I think are especially important.
Yes, and so it's not a commitment, it's just to see if it's a good idea, and if so, then we could contact you and see if how we can collaborate on this. Okay, I see three answers, so good, but we can go further on with other topics if necessary. Thank you. So Piotr, if you do think we have reached the
yes,
we have covered all the topics?
Yes, I think if there are no other questions or comments from your side, I think we can conclude for today. Together with Xavier, thank you for your participation, for all the speakers and all the questions and comments. It was a very important, I think, discussion.
Okay, so thank you once again for the speakers. Thank you to the audience, and this InfoShare will be has been recorded. So if you have some colleagues who would like to look at some presentations that might appear informative for you, Once again, many thanks, and we will try to continue to organize some info share or dissemination for, about this subject. So thank you very much, and we will close here now. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.